Most parents think they're teaching their children the difference between needs and wants, but what they're actually teaching, without realizing it, is guilt, confusion, and emotional spending. And the scary part is, you don't see the damage immediately. You only see it years later when your child grows up, earns money, and still struggles to control their spending. One of the greatest mistakes parents make, and I'm one myself, is turning wants versus needs into a good versus bad conversation. Needs unfortunately become good, wants become bad. And once a child learns that wanting something is bad, two things happen. Either they feel guilty for wanting things, or they learn to hide their wants and spend emotionally later on, and it comes back with a vengeance. I see this mistake all the time, even in very normal, everyday circumstances. For example, when I'm out eating with my family, I'll often notice parents, and many a times they would place a phone or a tablet in front of their child and they treat it like it's necessary. What is it necessary for? I'm not sure. I don't do it myself, but it might be necessary to get them calm, to eat their food, or maybe even just to not create a ruckus around. It is not because the child needs it to survive, but sometimes the parent might be tired. Like I said earlier, they don't want to be embarrassed with their child moving around or creating a ruckus or, one of these things. I'm not very certain. At that moment, a want quietly becomes a need. Screens, enrichment classes, entertainment. These things slowly shift categories without us realizing it. So, how do I explain wants versus needs to my own children? I don't explain it as right or wrong. I explain it as order. I ask one very simple question. If you don't have this, will we suffer a very terrible consequence? And if they don't get that, I'll make it even much, much, much clearer for them. I would simplify the consequence. If I don't have it, would it lead to serious harm? Would I get hurt? Could I possibly die from it? If it is true, then it is a need. So, what are these things? Examples are food is a need, water is a need. In today's society, housing is also a need because it protects us from danger. Now, compare that with wants. Wants make us feel very happy. They make life very enjoyable. And we will survive without them. So these are wants, and that distinction matters. A want is not wrong. A want is just a lower priority. So once children understand this hierarchy, decision making becomes much, much easier. The hardest part for parents isn't logic, it's emotions. Because emotional wants feel urgent. When a child is overwhelmed, reasoning doesn't work immediately. So my very first priority is never explanation, it's calming. Now, I gotta take this with a pinch of salt. It doesn't mean I do not lose my cool. There have been times when my child is just a little bit overbearing and I do lose my temper as well. Sometimes that could also mean, and I've done this before, distracting them with something else. Of course, the younger they are, the easier it gets to distract, and the older they are, it is not so easy to distract them. So it is not to trick them, but it is to allow the emotions to settle. And once they are calm, that is when you can begin to explain. That is when you can begin to rationalize. And that is when true learning actually begins. There is one phrase I personally hold very closely, and it's this: values are not taught, they are caught. And parents, yourselves and myself, we are the most influential influencers in our children's lives. So if we talk about restraint, but we ourselves happen to spend impulsively, our children will not only spot that, but they will also sound out and they would also realize, they would even highlight to us and you and me that there is a double standard, often immediately or maybe in their own actions. So at home, my wife and I, we speak openly about the purchases that we make. And we do this sometimes without even thinking because it is already a family culture. And we speak out. And whenever we disagree, we do disagree it about that purchase. And if we do agree, we would make the decision together.